Chiefs Kingdom. Today I will be taking over Brett Veach's job. I will be the new general manager for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I will try to piece together what the Kansas City Chiefs might do this free agency. Yes, we're going to be talking trades, restructures, extensions, and who they might sign this free agency, and we're going to have fun with it. But before we do get in all of that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, as I'm going to keep you up to date on anything Kansas City Chiefs related that you do not want to miss out on. And without further ado, let's have some fun. Now, before we get too carried away in all of this and me predicting everything that I feel the Kansas City Chiefs may do, we're going to discuss that a little bit. So, I know a lot of people will dive into the comments and want to discuss, oh, the Kansas City Chiefs ain't got no money. I understand. I know at this moment, they're negative $3 million in cap space. I know it doesn't look good. But let's not act like we haven't been here before, Chiefs Kingdom. The Kansas City Chiefs have been in cap situations to where you think they can't do anything, and they do everything to make this team look better. That's why Brett Veach is one of the best at his job, if not best. And I will just be role-playing. And I will do this every weekend until free agency gets here. And we will be doing my dream free agency and try to make it realistic as possible, even though it may seem very unrealistic. And my first order of business I want to get into is Frank Clark. Now, why would I focus on something like Frank Clark more than Orlando Brown Jr.? Because the left tackle, he's the one that's going to protect the face of your franchise and Patrick Mahomes. I get it. But Frank Clark is due $31 million this year. You know we ain't paying that. So the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to find a way to either they have to talk with Frank Clark and say, hey, we need to restructure this deal, or he's going to walk. Now, if the Kansas City Chiefs do decide to release Frank Clark, I think there will be around an $8 million to $9 million dead cap hit, but the Kansas City Chiefs will free up $21 million. Vice versa with that is if you restructure, you can free up around that amount too. So it's just, does Frank Clark want to be a Kansas City Chief? And we've heard a lot about Frank Clark, and we've seen how much he loves the Kansas City Chiefs, how much he loves Chiefs Kingdom, and how much he loves Coach Reid, basically saying he's a huge father figure in his life. I am hoping somehow, some way that they can restructure a deal. Now, yes, I will agree with a lot of Chiefs Kingdom that when it comes to in-season performances, it's been very inconsistent with Frank Clark as a best. You're going to get most of your production in the playoffs when it matters most. And honestly, I would take that, but I wouldn't take it at $31 million either. I think Frank Clark's at the point of his career where he's a rotational pass rusher. And I think that would fit Kansas City like perfectly if you just bring him in on get to the quarterback type of downs. And also, he is a huge motivational piece in this locker room. We heard it throughout the whole training camp last offseason with how much he helped George Karlaftis. And then the swagger, the dog mentality he brings. Everybody wants to step their game up to that next level, all because of Frank Clark. And that is going to be a huge missing piece if he's not on this team moving forward. Yes, I do agree. $31 million is steep, but if you can trim that down by half, honestly, even more. If you get that to like the $10 million range, I don't know how deep we can go with that. And just pay him that type of money and you free up $20 million, that is huge moving forward. And that is also huge moving forward in the cap situation as well. Because as the All Chiefs Kingdom says, the Chiefs don't have cap room. Bam, there's your cap room. And there's plenty more ways to get it. I just think Frank Clark will be priority number one before we focus on the priority number two. Now let's focus on priority number two. Since you guys knew I talked about Frank Clark, there's no other direction this is going to go besides Orlando Brown Jr. Now, it will be the Kansas City Chiefs will franchise tag him again. My preference and what I prefer is you franchise him or you get so close to a long-term deal that this doesn't get eked out all the way through July and August. Because if it does, like I mentioned many times on this channel before, is if he's holding out in July, you're going to get the same Orlando Brown that we have seen time in and time out, where he is rusty to start the season and then the wheels get turning into December. I want Orlando Brown Jr. mini camps, OTAs, training camp, preseason. I want his wheels to already be going. Now, the pivotal point here is going to be, which I'm going to get a lot of Chiefs Kingdom eyes in on this, is you either extend him early or you find a trade partner and you basically focus in the draft on your new potential left tackle. Because I know the Kansas City Chiefs, I think they were like a few million away and guaranteed money away. If Orlando Brown Jr. is still requesting to get paid as much as Trent Williams, You just can't do it. And if he's not bringing his number down whatsoever, you just can't do it. And you shouldn't drag it all the way to July. So Orlando Brown Jr.'s value will get you another first-round pick. And the Kansas City Chiefs would have then 2 first-round picks to play with. It's going to be interesting to see how Brett Veach and crew basically attack this. I do believe we will tag him, and then I think you got to get an extension done as soon as possible. Definitely before the draft, because you need those assets now. Yes, the Kansas City Chiefs don't have many holes, but a huge hole would be a left tackle position if your left tackle is going to hold out again. And that's something I know Chiefs Kingdom and management doesn't want to deal with. So if he's asking for Trent Williams types of dollars, you basically do what you did with Tyreek Hill last year and go find it. You find it, we can agree on trade compensation. We got ourselves a deal, and Kansas City will get draft assets, and they will be able to draft their left tackle of the future. Now, again, we don't know what kind of draft capital that may be. In my assumption, it's a first. And when you have 2 first-round picks, there's a good possibility you can bundle that to move into the top 10, top 15, and get a really solidified left tackle. Now, I haven't really focused on any draft prospects yet, but I know usually when it comes to offensive linemen and left tackles, they go early in drafts, and I'm pretty sure this draft will be no different. If you give the Kansas City Chiefs 2 first-round picks to play with to move forward, there would be no issue in getting your left tackle. So there's a food for thought there for you, Chiefs Kingdom. I do not know what way we're going to go with Orlando Brown Jr. I can see him being in Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City Chief for the long term, and I can also see him want Trent Williams dollars, and Chiefs and the Kansas City Chiefs don't want to pay that. So we will have our eyes peeled on this OBJ situation throughout this offseason. I just hope it doesn't last too long. Now, my priority number 3, besides Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones is the most important player on this team. You need to extend this man, and you need to make sure he is a Kansas City Chief for the rest of his life. And he has mentioned that's what he wants to be. Now, I do not know what kind of money sign, dollar signs that Chris Jones will want. I do know he deserves whatever he would want, and the Chiefs have to get close to that point. And I believe Chris Jones is the type of player that will prioritize the situation he is in. Now, people try to compare it to an Aaron Donald situation where he's making $31 million a year. I don't know if it'll get that high, but I do know Chris Jones deserves to be $25 million a year type of player. And I believe that's around the range the Chiefs and Chris Jones might agree to. And why would that be huge? To basically not have Chris Jones play out his contract, but also to extend him? For the very fact I mentioned is you get Chris Jones for the rest of his career, and also you free up more cap space with this year because, yes, it's $25 million a year, but that breaks down so weird, and usually most of that money is on the back end. So what you're paying Chris Jones now will probably be less than what it is on the new contract. Yes, the guaranteed dollars will be more and things like that, but when you look at it a yearly perspective, the Chiefs will open up and free more cap space. So they need to lock down Chris Jones for the future, and also it helps benefit this team in the future as well. You cannot lose Chris Jones. And people have mentioned, what about trading Chris Jones? This is not a Tyreek Hill situation whatsoever. Patrick Mahomes makes that offense. You can give him any weapons in the world, and we will always be a top 5 offense. That is Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid at their best. No discredit to what Tyreek Hill brings to this team. No discredit that he is one of the best offensive weapons in the league, if not best offensive weapons in the league. But like I mentioned, Patrick Mahomes makes the offense go. Chris Jones makes this defense go. And if you move on from Chris Jones, I do not know what this defense looks like and who you would have to depend on. A lot of people would say Nick Bolton, but I think that's a huge gap from Chris Jones then to your next player and Nick Bolton. Again, no discredit to Nick Bolton. It just shows how superior Chris Jones is. You need to lock that dude up. Now, this is where it gets to the fun, interesting part where we're going to talk about new faces and new places, and that new place is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I may be going out on a limb. I may be stretching, but I'm a temporary GM. This isn't my real role, so I get to have fun with it. And the first name I'm going to focus on is DeAndre Hopkins. And this is an interesting kind of conversation. It's also an interesting type of debate because I think it's literally 50-50 on if Chiefs Kingdom wants to trade for him and if they don't. And I think I've jumped to the side where I believe we should trade for him. And now here's why. I don't think it would cost too much to get him. I think it'd be a second round pick, which is high, but with DeAndre Hopkins, it's an elite receiver. Like, I would go all day, all over it. And also, with you hearing me going after DeAndre Hopkins, that means I don't believe the Kansas City Chiefs are going to re-sign Juju. I've also been 50-50 on that too, is because these wide receiver markets in free agency are ridiculous. And I would love to bring Juju back. But if he's going to push dollar signs around $20 million a year, DeAndre Hopkins next year is making $19 million. Who would you rather pay that dollar point for? A DeAndre Hopkins or a Juju? And I think that's no debate at that point. I'm going to go DeAndre Hopkins. Now, last year, he was suspended, he dealt with injuries, and still got 700 yards and 3 touchdowns. If you get a fully healthy and fully motivated DeAndre Hopkins, who has preached time in and time out that he loves Patrick Mahomes' game, and it just seems like he wants to be with Mahomes, I think that's a match made in heaven. It honestly reminds me of, even though different kind of skill set and player, is when Randy Moss joined Tom Brady later in his career, and then that team was nearly unstoppable. If you pair up DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore, which I think would be so beneficial for Sky Moore moving forward to learn from a top-end wide receiver like that, and I believe Sky Moore is going to elevate his game next year as well, would be so much fun to watch. And I also accidentally excluded MVS too. Just imagine that core. I would definitely take that point. And also, DeAndre Hopkins, you could trade him and then you do a contract extension to where I mentioned in the Chris Jones aspect is you can make his cap hit less than $19 million this year and back end it more as well. So as much as Chiefs Kingdom don't see the Kansas City Chiefs trading for DeAndre Hopkins or even a wide receiver number 1 like that, or even a wide receiver that just hit 30 years old, I think the thing that kind of started turning my head, even though I don't really buy into this story as well, but I do buy that the Kansas City Chiefs were interested, was when A.J. Brown came out and said that the Chiefs were one of the teams trying to get him. I believe it because Brett Veach has his eyes on everyone. So I believe he will be interested in DeAndre Hopkins. He might even be having negotiations and talks with them right now, trying to find out what the price point and what the yearly amount may be to get him. It's just, how close are the Cardinals willing to get to Brett Veach? And if it's in biting distance, Brett Veach will nab him. And I think it could be very likely. It's just what it all comes down to. I would love to have DeAndre Hopkins as the Kansas City Chiefs because it's going to be hard to beat this team fully healthy, and this offense will be firing on all cylinders. Now, we're going to focus solely on free agency right now, and I may be surprising a lot of people here, but it shouldn't really. So, a position that's been of need, and for ever since Mitchell Schwartz has retired, is right tackle. And I believe the Kansas City Chiefs will try to find a right tackle this free agency because I know that has been bugging them too, that they couldn't solidify that role. And I know there's been a lot of people that are now convinced Andrew Wiley can be that guy because of his playoff run and his Super Bowl. But I'm not going to forget what he's done in 17 games too because it's been very inconsistent at best. And also, someone's going to pay Andrew Wiley that money. So let him get his payday. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Kansas City Chiefs are knocking on a guy like Jawan Taylor's door and trying to see, hey, can we bring him to the Kansas City Chiefs? And if he could take a deal like between 12 to 14 million a year. And also, it would be huge for the point I mentioned earlier as well with Orlando Brown Jr. If you can get Orlando Brown Jr. to a contract extension and you end up having to trade him and getting another first-round pick, that leaves a hole on your left tackle position. So you might as well solidify your right tackle position and just worry about one need on the line. Because you can go into the draft and be like, whew, okay, at least we don't have to worry about right tackle too. At least we got that assured during free agency. I like Jawan Taylor. Is he the best right tackle in the league? No, but he has some good upside. He is very positive, and I think he could fit this team well because what you notice about this whole O-line is they're really good at run blocking, and I think Jawan Taylor will fit that very, very well. So I think Jawan Taylor is an interesting name to watch out for, and it would also take away, hey, what about drafting for a right tackle? Because For some reason, Lucas Niang hasn't worked out, and we don't know what's going on with Darian Kennard, and I don't know if Coach Reed would just put him in next year and see how those wheels turn on the starting O-line. So put a veteran presence out there and have fun with it and see how it rolls. Now, my last offensive guy I'm going to talk about is a backup running back, and I believe the Kansas City Chiefs will need one. Also, in this video, I do believe the Kansas City Chiefs will re-sign Jerick McKinnon. Not believe, they have to. So you're going to solidify Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, and oh yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs did make some news today. Well, it wasn't really news. It was more of rumors, reports, but it should come no surprise to any of us that they're going to decline the fifth-year option on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Unfortunate to say the least. I have been a big CEH supporter, but I understand it. The production hasn't matched the value of the first-round pick, so it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the Kansas City Chiefs try to trade him for a late-round pick and get more assets before you can't no more. So, for a running back number 3 or a running back number 2, because you can, what Kansas City does is a running back by committee, and they switch backs in and out all the time. And I know you guys have heard me mention guys like Samaje Perine. I think that would be an excellent fit. But also, I think Alexander Mattison would be a great fit in this offense as well. I know he had a little down year last year, but I think he feels the need of a backup running back or RB number 2 because he's played it most of his career. And he's been a great rotational back at that. He's a great pass catcher. He's a great runner. He's fast. He's anything you want for a running back. And a lot of people before this year thought he could be an RB number 1 on many teams. And with Alexander Mattison too, his dollar signs aren't going to be too much. I think he will command probably like $2 to $4 million a year. That is perfect range. He doesn't cost too much, and you still get an explosive runner on this team. The Kansas City Chiefs are always going to maneuver no matter how good Isaiah Pacheco is, no matter how good Jerick McKinnon is, no matter how good any running back on this team is, it's always going to be a running back by committee. So you might as well get the best running backs on that 53. That way when anyone steps in, you don't have to be concerned. And I definitely believe Alexander Mattison would be a great addition to that RB room. Now my last hire or signing or whatever you do. See, I'm new at this GM thing, so we don't even know what's going on around here. But I would love to add an addition to the defensive side of the ball. And I know Chiefs Kingdom has been clamoring, it seems, for the better half of, 5 years. Well, ever since we lost Justin Houston, Tamba Ali. Bring in pass rushers. We need that presence. And I hear you. And I agree with you. And I think someone with the likes of a veteran presence, because that's something the Kansas City Chiefs do oh so frequently. You've heard me mention guys like Yannick Ngakoue, but also Brandon Graham. Familiarity with Coach Reed, I think, would fit perfect. But I'm starting to lean more into Brandon Graham is because he reminds me of Frank Clark, just with more production. You've seen him in the Super Bowl. You've seen him during the playoff run. He brings that attitude. He brings that demeanor. Like, you all are going to play today. Trust me. And he just brings that dog. He brings that swag. And if Frank Clark happens not to restructure and the Kansas City Chiefs do release him, I think that would be the perfect plug and pull, and he might bring more production. And then I was thinking, if Frank Clark is on the team still, that duo would be great. Rotational-wise, man, Chiefs Kingdom wouldn't be talking about pass rushers anymore because you would have Frank Clark, Mike Dana, Brandon Graham, George Karlaftis, Chris Jones. Now, my thing that might kind of detour this a little bit is Carlos Dunlap. I love Carlos Dunlap. I just don't know how the Kansas City Chiefs view him, and they might want to bring him back. And again, Carlos Dunlap might want to retire on the top of the mountaintop. He said he just wants 100 sacks, and he wants a Super Bowl ring before he signed with the Kansas City Chiefs last offseason. Well, he got that now. So it's going to be interesting to see once training camp comes is what does Carlos Dunlap want to do with his future and how that all shapes out to be. But if he doesn't come back, Brandon Graham would be a solidified pass rusher on this team. Last year he had 11 sacks. Yeah, 32, 33? And he's still moving like a beast. Like I mentioned in prior videos as well. It's weird. With pass rushers, when they get above 30, it seems like that's when it starts clicking in. These veteran pass rushers, it's probably because their knowledge for the game is better than anyone else. They know how to get after the quarterback, and their sacks still tally up. That was the case with Carlos Dunlap. It's Brandon Graham. Frank Clark can still do it. Justin Houston's still doing it with the Ravens. These older dudes just know what's good and they know how to get after the quarterback. So give me one of these vets because I know it'll make the defense better. But with that, Chiefs Kingdom, I am hanging up my GM belt. Until next weekend, we're going to have another one of these videos and we're going to have fun chatting it up. I'm going to have more predictions. This is my first dream free agency for the Kansas City Chiefs. Let me know how you feel about it in the comments down below. Let's discuss. Let's have fun. But before you do, please do subscribe to the channel. If you did like this video, please give me that big thumbs up. I'm checking in. I'm checking out. Y'all take care. Peace.